My narcissist ex lied to everyone, claimed I held him hostage with incriminating evidence, and ruined my reputation, so I exposed his dark secrets to the world. You know, sometimes you don't realize the depths of someone's deception until it's too late, and by the time you do, the damage has already spread like wildfire. That's exactly what happened to me during and after my 11-year relationship with my ex. From the outside, he seemed like a charming, ambitious guy, but behind closed doors, he was a master manipulator, a textbook narcissist who spun elaborate lies about me to anyone who would listen, especially his coworkers. It started subtly. Coworkers blocking me on social media for no apparent reason, people I had never even met. When I questioned him about it, he brushed it off as a coincidence, later shifting the blame onto one specific coworker, claiming they were spreading false rumors about our relationship. At first, I wanted to believe him. I thought maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. But little things didn't add up, and over time, the cracks in his story grew wider. I eventually discovered the real reason behind his elaborate lies. He had been telling people at work that I was holding him hostage in our relationship, painting me as some sort of manipulative villain who wouldn't let him leave. According to him, my weapon of choice was an SD card containing incriminating material. What he conveniently left out? That SD card contained stolen nude photos of his cousin's ex-girlfriend, images he had secretly taken from his cousin's phone and saved without her consent. When I discovered them, I immediately informed the victim. She decided not to press charges, but I refused to return the SD card because I didn't trust him not to recover the files somehow. I wasn't blackmailing him. I wasn't even holding the SD card over his head. It was purely about protecting someone else's privacy. But of course, in his twisted narrative, I was the villain. And his coworkers? They believed him, because why wouldn't they? He was charismatic, and I was just the faceless, fabricated antagonist in his story. The final straw came when I started uncovering the extent of his lies. I realized he had tailored different versions of the story for different social circles. To one group, I was a controlling partner who refused to let him see his friends. To another, I was an emotionally unstable woman who threatened to ruin his life if he left me. And all the while, he kept up his facade, playing the role of the poor, innocent victim trapped in a nightmare of his own making. After months of processing what had happened, I decided I wasn't going to let him destroy my reputation without a fight. I created a private Instagram account and uploaded videos that exposed the truth about our relationship. These weren't just emotional venting sessions. I had concrete proof. Years of hidden recordings I had taken during some of our worst fights painted a stark picture of who he truly was. The videos showed him screaming at me over the smallest inconveniences, hitting me, and even admitting to stealing his friends' nudes. In one particularly damning clip, he boasted about how he planned to lie to the police to frame me. Everything was crystal clear. His face, his voice, his words. I laid it all out. The real story behind the SD card, the abuse, the lies, and his attempts to manipulate everyone around him. Once I felt I had adequately presented the truth, I began adding his coworkers and friends to the account. I was strategic about it. Those with public profiles received likes on their posts to guide them to my page, while private accounts were instructed through my bio not to accept my follow request. This way, he wouldn't know who had seen the truth. The response was overwhelming. Some unfollowed him immediately, others reached out to me with support, and a few even shared my posts to spread the word further. Slowly but surely, his web of lies unraveled, and people began to see him for who he really was. As expected, he was furious. He accused me of ruining his friendships and destroying his life. But the truth is, any friendship he lost was because of his own actions. His friends saw the videos of him abusing me, stealing explicit photos, and lying about me to cover his tracks. That wasn't my doing, it was his. He tried to guilt-trip me, even insinuating that he was suicidal. But after 11 years of using that tactic to manipulate me, it had lost its power. I calmly told him that if he was so ashamed of people seeing his true character, the solution was simple: change. But narcissists don't change. They double down, and that's exactly what he did. For the first time in years, I feel free. I'm no longer weighed down by the fear of his lies ruining my life. The truth is out there now, and no amount of manipulation can erase it. I've realized how much power I have when I stand up for myself, and I'll never let anyone misrepresent me like that again. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that fear can be paralyzing. It keeps you in toxic relationships, silences you when you should speak up, and blinds you to solutions that are right in front of you. But once you let go of that fear, you can reclaim your life. Now I'm finally able to close this chapter and move forward. The weight has lifted, and I can breathe again. Whatever he chooses to do next is no longer my problem. My story is out there, and it's not going away. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Remember, you're stronger than you think, and even the worst situations can be overcome. Sometimes, you just need to take that first step. Second story, I moved in with my boyfriend, and his erratic behavior is destroying me. Now I'm planning to leave after just 3 weeks of chaos. When I moved into my boyfriend's house 3 weeks ago, I never imagined it would turn out like this. He owns the house, and I thought it would be an exciting new chapter for us. But instead of finding comfort and stability, I've been dragged into an emotional roller coaster that's left me exhausted and questioning everything. The first week, I noticed some differences in our routines, but I thought we'd adapt. I work a regular 9-to-5 job, so I have to wake up around 8 a.m. every morning. My boyfriend, however, works on his own schedule, which seems to have no structure at all. Initially, I used to go to bed around 11 or 11:30 p.m., but since moving in with him, I compromised and started going to bed later, closer to midnight or 12:30. But even that wasn't enough. He has this habit of staying up all night, sometimes until 4, 5, or even 7 a.m., and it's been wreaking havoc on my sleep. The house has a master bedroom and a guest bedroom. I figured we'd both sleep in the master, but that became impossible pretty quickly. He would come in and out of the room constantly, making noise, turning on lights, and rummaging around. When I confronted him about it, he'd brush me off with, "Give me 10 minutes and I'll be in bed." But hours would pass, and he'd still be in the living room or the kitchen, clanging dishes or watching TV. His excuse? All my stuff is in the master bedroom, so I have to go in there. After days of interrupted sleep, I tried moving to the guest room, hoping for some peace. It doesn't have a lock, but I thought he'd respect my space if I told him how badly I needed rest. No such luck. He started coming into the guest room too, waking me up for no reason. I was lucky to get 5 or 6 hours of broken sleep most nights, and it was beginning to take a toll on me. Last night was the breaking point. I had an early doctor's appointment at 8 a.m. the next day, so I told him I needed to be up by 6:30. I made it clear I needed a good night's sleep, even leaving a note on the guest room door that said, "I have to be up early. Please be considerate." I went to bed around 11:30 p.m. with my usual setup. Eye mask, white noise fan, and a sleep podcast playing softly. But it didn't matter. He came into the room 3 times while I was sleeping, waking me up each time. He was drunk, turning on the light, pulling off my eye mask and laughing. I begged him to let me sleep, but instead of stopping, he started making obscene noises in the hallway, loudly joking about inviting strippers over. At that point, I broke down. I was crying, literally on my hands and knees, pleading with him to let me sleep. That's when he apologized, saying, "I'm sorry, I'm just a jerk," but it felt empty. I told him I couldn't take it anymore and needed to leave to get some rest. My plan was to sleep in my car. It was almost 1 a.m. As I was leaving, he started calling me, saying he was in bed now and asking me to come back. Against my better judgment, I returned. But of course, he wasn't in bed. He was in the basement doing laundry. When I finally tried to sleep again, he came into the room, started cuddling me, and apologized again. I asked him to come to my doctor's appointment with me in the morning, and he agreed. I got up to use the bathroom, and when I came out, he had locked himself in there. 10 minutes passed, then 15. When I knocked on the door, he claimed he was taking NyQuil. Frustrated and sleep-deprived, I lost it. I went back to the bedroom and started knocking things off the dresser and overturned a lamp. He pushed me onto the bed, and suddenly, the mood shifted. He started freaking out, accusing me of losing a necklace he'd been looking for. To calm the situation, I helped him find the necklace, but by then it was past 2 a.m. We went to the guest room, but I couldn't fall asleep there because he took my spot. So I went back to the master bedroom and slept there until my alarm went off. When I woke him up to get ready for the appointment, he noticed that his front veneer was missing. He accused me of taking it, which made no sense. I told him I hadn't touched it and even offered to help him find it after my appointment. But as I was leaving, he sent me a text saying, "You don't care about me. Get out and leave me alone. You're one of the most selfish individuals I've ever met." I ignored the text, but then he called to say he'd found his veneer. By the time I got back from the appointment, he was sound asleep. Meanwhile, I had to work a full 9-to-5 day from home, running on fumes. That was the final straw. Tonight, I'm planning to check into a hotel so I can sleep, and I'm seriously considering moving out this weekend. I feel awful about losing my temper last night and breaking the lamp, but I don't know how much more I can take. The lack of sleep, the constant disruptions, and the emotional whiplash are too much. Am I overreacting here? Or is this relationship just completely unsustainable? Third story. My dad abandoned me for years and now wants to move in after his accident. Here's why I refuse to help. Growing up, my dad was more of a ghost than a parent. He drifted in and out of my life without ever really sticking around, and as I got older, I learned to stop expecting anything from him. My mom, on the other hand, was the rock in my life. She worked tirelessly to make sure I had what I needed, even though money was always tight. One of the most painful things for her was the constant battle with my dad over child support. He'd duck and dodge every responsibility, and when she'd confront him about it, he'd just make excuses or disappear again. When my mom passed away, I inherited her house. It's a modest place, a single-story ranch, but it's home. I live there now with my girlfriend and her child, trying to build the stability I never really had as a kid. My dad, predictably, showed up after my mom's death. I thought maybe, just maybe, he wanted to reconnect, but it quickly became clear that his interest wasn't genuine. It always seemed like he only reached out when it benefited him, like he was trying to play the role of the doting father to impress a new girlfriend or wife. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. My dad got into a bad accident and ended up bedridden. The apartment he and his latest wife share is on the second floor, which apparently makes it impossible for him to live there now. Instead of figuring out their own solution, they decided my house was the perfect alternative. When he first floated the idea of moving in, I thought he was joking. But he wasn't. He and his wife just assumed they could move into my home, where I live with my girlfriend and her child, without so much as a proper discussion. "It's perfect," they said. "All on one floor, plenty of space, and you won't even notice us here." I wasn't about to let that happen. I told them straight up, no, that's not going to work. Of course, my dad was taken aback and demanded to know why I didn't trust him. He even offered to pay rent, as if that would make up for years of neglect and broken promises. I couldn't help but laugh. "Pay rent?" I said. "Why would I trust you to pay rent when you couldn't even pay child support for your own kid?" That hit a nerve. His wife, who'd been sitting quietly until that point, suddenly jumped in to defend him. She called my comment rude and out of line. I wasn't having it. "Look," I told her, "maybe you should ask one of your kids to take you both in, or one of his other kids. There are 8 of them after all. Why should it fall on me, the one he abandoned, to step up and help when he's never done the same for me?" They didn't take that well. My dad accused me of dragging up the past and said I was being unfair. But the way I see it, the past isn't the past when it directly shaped the present. I'm not going to pretend those years of neglect didn't happen just because it's inconvenient for him now. I ended the conversation by telling them, "Your attitude and mine are not going to mesh long term. Let's not even pretend this arrangement would work." Apparently, that was too much for them. I was asked to leave the hospital because I was causing a scene and upsetting my dad while he was still recovering. Fine by me. I walked out of there with no regrets. The way I see it, family isn't about blood. It's about effort and mutual respect. My dad had years, decades to be there for me, to build a relationship and to show he cared. He chose not to. And now, when it's convenient for him, he expects me to step in and play the role of the dutiful son? Not a chance. I don't feel guilty for saying no. In fact, I feel like I finally stood up for myself in a way I couldn't as a kid. Maybe that makes me the villain in their story, but in mine, it's just another chapter where I refuse to let someone else write the ending for me.